Paul Massey was a well-known figure in Salford, a town near Manchester in England. Born in 1960, Massey grew up in an area that was tough and working class, shaped by industrial decline and economic hardship. Salford, located near the Manchester Ship Canal, was a breeding ground for crime and gang culture, and Massey was inevitably drawn into this world from a young age. Welcome back to Crime Chronicles. Today we look at notorious Salford crime figure Paul Massey, known to some as Mr. Big. His misdeeds and involvement in crime are well documented, but he was also a gangland peacemaker during a time of uncontrolled violence in the Manchester underworld. Shockingly, he would be executed outside his home in 2015, an act that would kick off another wave of shootings in his beloved Salford. By the early 1970s, Massey had developed a reputation as a notorious hooligan, and by 12, he was already in trouble with the police. He was well known for his violent encounters, particularly with nightclub bouncers across Manchester's bustling nightlife scene. His notoriety only grew throughout the 1980s and 1990s, as he became involved in more serious criminal activities. During the 1980s, Massey and his associates, known as the Salford Lads, were involved in various illicit activities, including stolen credit card fraud, armed robbery, and commercial burglary. Like many other criminals from the north of England, Massey and his crew travelled to Amsterdam, where they engaged in counterfeit currency schemes and other illegal ventures. The rise of Manchester's nightlife scene, particularly with the opening of the Hacienda nightclub, brought an influx of clubbers and drug dealers eager to capitalise on the city's booming party culture. With the surge in demand for drugs, rival gangs began competing for control over the lucrative trade. Massey's group was suspected of using violent means to maintain dominance, securing their foothold in the criminal underworld. Massey was also closely linked to the infamous Noonan brothers, Damien and Desi Noonan, who controlled much of Manchester's organised crime during the 1990s. The Noonans were part of a feared Irish crime family, and Massey's connection to them only solidified his status as a major player in the city's underworld. Damien Noonan, a formidable figure, was installed as the head doorman at the Hacienda, ensuring that the Salford firm had influence over one of Manchester's most famous nightclubs. However, both Noonans met violent ends. Damien died in a motorcycle accident while on holiday, and Desi was stabbed to death by a crack dealer in South Manchester. Despite his violent reputation, Massey was sometimes seen as a peacemaker in the criminal world. In the mid-1990s, Manchester was in the grip of a violent feud between rival gangs from Cheetham Hill and Moss Side. Massey played a crucial role in brokering a truce, bringing together gang leaders in an attempt to halt the bloodshed. The negotiations took place in various pubs across the city, with gang members arriving in bulletproof vests, wary of ambushes. During this period, Massey was also targeted by law enforcement. Authorities sought to imprison him, but witness intimidation and fear prevented many from testifying against him. One such incident involved a brawl outside a nightclub, witnessed by over 30 people. Yet when the case went to court, not a single witness was willing to testify. Massey famously celebrated outside the courthouse after the charges were dropped. However, his luck ran out when he was convicted of stabbing a man in the groin in a nightclub altercation. He was sentenced to 14 years in prison, marking a significant turning point in his life. When Massey was released from prison in 2012, he returned to a Salford that had changed drastically. The city's criminal underworld had become even more violent, with younger and more ruthless gangs vying for power. Despite his past, Massey attempted to rehabilitate his image by running for mayor of Salford. In a rare interview, he expressed his hopes for the city, showing a more humble and reflective side of himself. However, his political aspirations did not gain much traction, and his campaign was ultimately unsuccessful. Law enforcement believed that upon his release from prison, Massey began associating with a gang known as the A-Team, a criminal collective operating in both Manchester and Liverpool. The A-Team was led by Stephen Britton and was locked in a deadly feud with a rival faction, the Anti-A-Team, led by Michael Carroll. The rivalry between these two groups led to a series of violent clashes across Salford and Manchester. In the months leading up to his death, tensions between the A-Team and the Anti-A-Team escalated. One significant incident saw a grenade thrown at a member of the A-Team's house, which miraculously did not result in any fatalities. On July 26th of 2015, Massey was returning home in his silver BMW after meeting with another A-Team member. He had made a stop to buy a bottle of Bacardi before heading back to his residence on Manchester Road. Unlike many other high-profile gangsters, Massey did not employ heavy security and remained in the neighbourhood he had always called home. As he pulled into his driveway, a masked hitman, armed with an Uzi submachine gun, approached and opened fire. Massey was struck multiple times, suffering around 20 bullet wounds. The gunman, dressed in a military-style camouflage, ensured Massey did not survive the attack. He died at the scene from catastrophic injuries. His murder sent shockwaves through Salford and the wider criminal world. Hundreds attended his funeral, including several high-profile individuals from Manchester's underworld. Following Massey's murder, the gang war between the A-Team and the Anti-A-Team intensified. Michael Carroll, fearing for his life, fled the country. Meanwhile, graffiti condemning him as a traitor appeared all over Salford, calling him a snake and daring him to return and face the conflict. Shootings and violent attacks plagued Salford in the wake of Massey's assassination. Perhaps the most shocking incident occurred on October the 12th of 2015, when a 7-year-old boy was shot after his mother answered the door. The bullet passed through her and struck the child. Both miraculously survived, but the incident highlighted the extent to which the gang war had spiraled out of control. For 3 years, Massey's killer remained at large. However, in May of 2018, another key figure in the conflict, John Kinsella, a close associate of Massey, was gunned down in St Helens while walking his dog with his pregnant girlfriend. The murder bore striking similarities to Massey's killing, prompting police to intensify their investigation. Authorities eventually arrested Mark Fallows, a known criminal and convicted armed robber. Fallows, nicknamed the Iceman, was a long-distance runner with an obsession for precision. He had used GPS tracking devices and night vision hunting scopes to meticulously plan his hits. He was paid an estimated £10,000 to carry out Massey's murder. After a 26-day trial, Mark Fallows and his accomplice, Stephen Boyle, were convicted of the murders of Paul Massey and John Kinsella. They were sentenced to life imprisonment. Paul Massey's life was one of notoriety, violence, and ultimately tragedy. From a young hooligan to a feared gang leader, his influence in Salford was undeniable. While he attempted to bring about peace in Manchester's gang wars and even sought political office, his past ties to crime never truly faded and led to him paying the ultimate price. Thank you for joining us today on Crime Chronicles. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the channel with your friends.